All right, so today we're going to try and tackle two albums by one artist that we're both like super obsessed with and have been for a long time, and that artist is Brad Mehldau. And the two records are Largo and Highway Rider. What they have in common is that they're produced by Jon Brion, who is an amazing producer that I have a lot of admiration for. He did a great record with Amy Mann that I love a lot. Has worked with a number of incredible artists. He's an amazing producer, and the work that he did with Mehldau, I think personally, and like I said, we're both epically huge fans of Mehldau in general. I think these two records are some of the most listenable. If it's someone who's never really heard Brad Mehldau and maybe is not particularly into jazz in quotations, these are great records that kind of fall in the contemporary third stream-ish kind of vibe. Third stream, I guess, meaning like it's kind of classical, right? There's a lot of orchestrated stuff. There's oboes and bassoons on Largo. There's strings. At the same time, it's kind of jazzy, again, sort of in quotations, because there's solos. Mehldau's an iconic jazz pianist, so there's going to be that. He's got some of his trio with him on Largo that I love. Jorge Rossi, my old teacher, and probably my greatest bass hero of all time, Larry Grenadier's on here. And also one of my favorite drummers of all time, Matt Chamberlain, is on Largo. And I believe also on Highway Rider. Jim Keltner's also on this record. Listening to Largo this week, I just kept thinking about how many of my hip hop buddies would probably dig this record. It's like really groovy, kind of like a mid tempo, a lot of mid tempos on the record, kind of a head bob. Like the drums are kind of simple, but the production stuff is amazing. It's like a handbook of tasty studio secrets. I mean, if you're just a fan of music, listen to it because it's brilliant. If you're a musician, producer, hip hop guy, I mean, wow, it's lined end to end with gold. Like he does tracks where the piano is prepared, manipulated with putty and muted and just sounds interesting. There's so many cool things. He does a track on here that he only plays vibes on, like vibraphone, which is obviously unusual for Mehldau. It's just so great. There's a couple songs where he has two basses panned left and right. Super groovy. Like if anyone who's a fan of like Robert Glasper or Jason Moran or like the Bad Plus, of course, will like totally dig this record. I love it because it came out in the year that I graduated high school and went to jazz school. So it's kind of just right in my wheelhouse, production wise. I've taken a lot of inspiration from it. The combination of Jon Brion and Matt Chamberlain is just like a dream team for me. If I had a genie in a bottle to do a Mountain Walker record, like those two guys would just be like, I would just be, in heaven with those two guys because they do everything that I'm just all about. My other favorite track before I pass it back off to you, I mean, there's so many cool things and so many signature things that are classic Mehldau, right? He does a Beatles song. We talked about that. He does Dear Prudence on here, which I guess maybe is a John Lennon song technically, right? Or it's on a late, correct me, what is it on the White Album?
It's on the White Album, I think, yeah.
Right. So and he does Mother Nature's Son as a medley with Joe Beam's Wave, which is super creative and cool. And lastly, but not least, the one that I kind of forgot about that just had me just, against the wall listening to it this week was he does an original song called Sabbath. And when you put it on, it is obviously a tribute to Black Sabbath because it is like Brad Mehldau wrote this Sabbath, like early metal riff. And the whole song is a duo with Matt Chamberlain, piano and drums. And they piped the acoustic drums onto Hammond rotating Leslie speakers, like in different rooms. So that it was isolated. And Jon Brion, being the master producer that he is, created this track that almost sounds like, it definitely sounds like it's more than two people. If you're not paying close attention. And it is just sonically brilliant. I mean, the way he's processing the sound is incredible. So I just kind of fell into this record, so much so that I forgot to listen to some of the other stuff we were supposed to do a little bit this week. I was so into it. But anyway, 8 years later, 2010, he did another record with Highway Rider. I'm into that record as well, but we decided we'd split off and to each take one apiece. So talk to me about Highway Rider. I mean, I know it's a double record. I remember a lot of the great moments of it. Yeah, it's beautiful. Also very orchestrated.
Yeah, 2010, and it's a double CD, and it's Mehldau with his core musician crew. Grenadier and Jeff Ballard, and Matt Chamberlain again also. Talk about the two drummer thing in a minute. And most significantly, Joshua Redman, who's he's old colleagues with. He played in Josh's band very early on, and Joshua returns the favor here beautifully. And a chamber orchestra. Mehldau composed, arranged, and orchestrated everything on the record. And it's hard to overstate how beautiful and restrained and subtle this record is. And there's a long history of people in jazz uniting with an orchestra and trying to do the phrase you mentioned, this third stream music. Some of them were less than successful projects, but there's a long history with piano players and composers. Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, Joe Zawinul, Modern Jazz Quartet with John Lewis at the keys have done this combination of orchestra and jazz group. Mehldau takes it to a ridiculous level of beauty and subtlety. And I don't know, I haven't talked to Brad Mehldau or done the deep, read a ton of interviews or something. I don't know how much was written for the jazz players, but it's just so beautiful and restrained. It feels natural, but it's also very, very easy flowing. I don't know how to describe it. Joshua Redman is just insane on here. And if you know Joshua, he is both restrained and subtle in one moment, and he's just an intense improviser in the next. And he brings the subtle end of his repertoire of sounds to this recording. And the thing with the two drummers is beautiful. I mean, on a lot of tracks, it's Matt Chamberlain, Jeff Ballard, and they have different roles. One might just be playing snare or brushes, the other one the kit. One is percussion, one is kit, and back and forth. And the way it's recorded is it's just interlaced and woven at a just, heavenly level. And the orchestra doesn't just sort of accompany like some of these projects are. It's sort of there's a whole nother voice, like another player in the room, so to speak. And I find that really alluring and really remarkable and really admirable. And like most of Mehldau, even when he's in the trio, I find that, there's a variety of contrasting sounds, even though the flow of the tracks from one end of the CD to the other and into the next and to the end has a lot of contrasts. 1 minute you're starting with, okay, here's sort of a piano solo soliloquy, and then it's the quartet jazz group, and then the orchestra kind of eases in and does this thing, and then it's out. There's one track where there's a fun little sort of vocal choir thing on it from musicians and family members, I think, and it's really neat. Mm-hmm. And I think cinematic is one of the words I wanted to make sure I dropped in this discussion of this record.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been obsessed with the latest rabbit hole for Gene has been film scores, the ones that are sort of composed, orchestras and chamber and electronics and strings mixed up. And this one is I didn't really realize it when I was engaging and just engulfing myself in this record when it first came out, but it's very cinematic. And it's funny, I just noticed when sort of prepping for our conversation is that it's called Highway Rider, and it's got a picture of what I think is a drive-in theater on the cover. I'm thinking maybe there is some cinematic threaded into this intuitively or purposefully by Mr. Mehldau, but I love this record. It's beautifully recorded. Jon Brion, takes a slightly different tactic than he did on Largo, but it's still very unique. And again, the word subtle is there. It's just beautiful things are happening, but they're very woven and subtly sort of painted into the flow of the tracks and the players and the music and the elements of it.
Yeah, we were just talking before we started a little bit that Highway Rider and Largo are 8 years apart, and they are there is definitely overlap between the two of them, but they are kind of distinctive. I feel like Highway Rider is a little more orchestral for sure, a little more cinematic, a little more like a film score. Largo is a little more like it has a little more of a California kind of late night head bob vibe. Like I said, almost like a DJ Shadow or something. In fact, I think you asked me if there was any DJs on there because it kind of has that thing. It's got that electronic crackle and stuff. But anyway, both these records are brilliant. I've been really enjoyed rediscovering them this week. Yeah, Highway Rider, Largo. I can't say it enough. If whether it's a hip hop guy, a jazz head, just someone looking for some great music to kind of go for a walk on, this stuff just is really moving end to end and really original. It won't let you down, that's for sure.
Most definitely. Beautiful things. And thank you, Jon Brion.
Yeah, Jon Brion out there. Check him out too. There's all kind of tangential stuff we got to get into. We got to do an episode for the Amy Mann record that he did.
Oh my God.
Definitely a huge fan of Brian for sure. So yeah, that's it. Cool. Brad Mehldau, Highway Rider, and Largo.
Last thing is we're going to be returning to Brad Mehldau, I'm sure, down the line because there's so much in the Mehldau world. So
oh yeah, 100%.
Let's start.
We'll be back. It will be revisited. Thanks for checking out our weekly web series, Deep Stacks, brought to you by Big X Music, a conversation each week with my dad, 40-plus year veteran of the music industry, founder of Horizon Records and concert promoter, where I sit down and we talk together about the music we're listening to. Please subscribe, leave us a comment down below, and join the conversation.